Hello everyone! So in this video we're going to be talking about a pretty important concept about derivatives, okay? So let's say you have a function f of x. Well, the derivative of f of x will be f prime of x. F prime of x, okay? If you had a function, an equation of y as a function of x, okay, then the derivative you can write as dy dx. The derivative of y with respect to x, okay? A tiny little change in y over a tiny little change in x. Now, what if you were to take the derivative of the derivative, okay? So f prime, well, f prime of x, the derivative of f prime of x will be f prime of x. And we call this the second derivative. So this is our first derivative, and the derivative of the first derivative will be our second derivative. Likewise, here you can also take the second derivative. It's written like d squared y over dx squared. Okay, so this is our first, this is our second. Okay, the third derivative is written will just be a derivative of the second derivative. And here will be d cubed y over dx cubed. This will be our third. So for the nth derivative, you write it like this, okay? The nth derivative equals the derivative of, well, I would say the previous function, the n minus 1th derivative. Like how the third derivative is a derivative of the second derivative, while the second derivative is a derivative of the first. So when you keep on taking derivatives, you get the nth derivative of x, okay? And you write it here like d to the nth y over dx to the nth. Okay, so we're going to find, let's do a quick sample problem. F of x equals sine of x. What is the f prime prime of x? The second derivative of f of x. Well, the second derivative of f of x, well, first we need to find the first derivative. You have to go in order. So f prime of x we know is cosine of x. Now the derivative of f prime, the derivative of cosine of x is negative sine of x. Derivative of the first derivative will give us our second derivative. So f prime prime of x will be negative sine of x, just due to our trig rules. Okay? Here's a interesting question. It's one of my favorites. If f of x is equal to sine of x, what is the 100th derivative of x? Now, obviously, common sense dictates that you will not take 100 derivatives. However, since you see that it switches from cosine to sine, you can try to search for a pattern. So f of x equals sine of x. F prime of x we just found is cosine of x. F prime prime of x equals negative, I might have written 3 primes. F prime prime of x is negative sine of x. And f prime 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 of x equals negative cosine of x. What's the fourth derivative of x? Well, negative cosine of x. Well, the derivative of cosine of x will be negative sine of x, or that's sine of x. So you can see that it will cycle every time through. You've reached a point where it goes through a loop, okay? So if it's divisible by 4, okay, since it's a loop of 4, then it will be this, sine of x. Otherwise, if it's divisible by 1, it will be cosine of x. Divisible by 2, negative sine of x. And divisible by 3 will be negative cosine of x. So 100 is divisible by 4. So you have f, so 100. So 100th derivative of x equals sine of x. In reality, you'll never use the 100th derivative. In fact, most applications usually typically use the first and second derivatives. Maybe third, but usually first and second. Okay, but this is a good thought experiment to see exactly how this works.